Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your nonprofit origin story?
Good morning, Tasha. My name is Bobbie James. My nonprofit is Jamsz Konnections. If you asked me this maybe even last week, my origin story might have been a little bit different because I told someone else the origin story here recently. But as I realize about myself and my life, my origin story for Jamsz Konnections, I think, came at birth.
That's awesome. I love that.
And the reason that I say that, one of my prior board members came up with connections as part of our name. Jams is a play on my last name, James. Plus, I love music, and any musician out there, they typically think about jam sessions, right?
Yeah.
And so when we started Jamz Konnections, we really wanted to manage events and bring people together for philanthropic purposes. But I thought, why do we have to limit it to music? We can have conversations as jam sessions, right? We can get together for fitness for jam sessions, right? But because I didn't want it to be James, and I wanted to have that feel of jamming, connecting, right? My former board member says, why don't we have connections as the next part of the name, but spell it with a K? I'm like, but I was that kid who, if I saw someone looking lost, I wanted to make them feel welcome, wanted to connect with them. At any job, I was the person, hey, I don't recognize you, or you knew I'm Bobbie, blah, blah, blah. And so I've always been drawn to wanting to connect with people, bringing people together. And so thanks for the opportunity to tell a new story of
Yeah.
the origin of jams. However, the previous story is such. I had a health scare, and whenever we are reminded of our impermanence, that we will not be here forever, it may lead us sometimes to, why am I here? What is my purpose? Am I making any type of positive impact? And so I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And on my 10-year cancer-free anniversary, I thought, man, that's worth celebrating. Most times people are looking at a 5-year milestone of remnants of it coming back. And I was like, we need to do something. And so I decided I'm going to put on a concert to celebrate this and find some local nonprofit to benefit from. And I truly feel that the universe delivered to me that that's my calling, that I am supposed to organize and coordinate connecting people for a purpose.
Mm.
So that planted the seed for Jamz Konnections. But again, as I think about it, I'm like, I think I'm aligned with what I was truly born to do.
I'm feeling so much synergy and similar story here, Bobbie, right? Like
Okay.
similarly, I think I'd always been doing the hive just without the intention, like that level of intentionality behind
Right,
it, not
right.
just in nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I was still recovering from a cancer related surgery when I had this
Wow.
wild idea where I was like, oh, so isolating, right? It's such an interesting, and I love your discussion of impermanence because I think that's where community shines, right? It gives us something to hold on to. I always say it's like a soft landing place, just like
Yes.
to fall back into. Oh, I love this.
Mhm.
And Jam's Connections, give us the like quick overview. What all does Jam's Connection do out in the community?
Yes, great. Thank you. So Jamz Konnections is a nonprofit, and our goal is to be an ally and advocate to other nonprofits. However, we see the value in bridging the gap between for-profit and nonprofit organizations, creating community awareness for both organizations, connecting them to resources and education, and still coordinate events for philanthropic purposes.
That's amazing. Love it. This is fantastic. And favorite thing about this work and being in the nonprofit space?
The people. Simply said, I would often describe myself as a flower. And people are my sunshine and rain. And some people might look at rain like crying or sad, but nature needs water, nature needs sun, it needs it all to really prosper and become, what we were meant to be. And so whenever I get the opportunity to meet new people, and especially when they're excited and passionate about what they've started or what they're doing, it just warms my spirit, not just my heart, but my whole spirit and soul.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I feel like we just two people in two different countries, but with the same heart behind it. Oh my goodness,
Yes.
because I have very similar, like that's how I would describe it too, where I know for some people it's overwhelming meeting too many people.
Yeah.
Someone once say to me that my calendar terrified them, and I was like, oh, but look at all the cool humans I get to talk to this week. Like, I don't even know
Right.
what's going to come out of this, but life affirming sometimes, right? To hear
Yes.
people's
Yes.
stories and get that background.
Abs-
People are my reason for sure for this sector too.
Yeah.
But challenges that you've seen, you're kind of in a unique spot as both a nonprofit and a provider of services.
Right.
What are you seeing some of the big challenges for yourself personally and also for the sector?
Thanks for that question because it's a great question. And as I continue to speak to nonprofit leaders, regardless of if they're in the States or in another country, I find it's similar, especially if they're a small nonprofit. We're a small nonprofit and we strive to helping those smaller nonprofits because those are the ones that usually are wearing all the hats and don't
Yeah.
know where to find the resources or how to connect or how to get community awareness, right? So continuously, there's lack of funds, there's lack of people, there's lack of resources, right? And we know, Tasha, that there's so many resources out there. But if you don't know that, or you don't know where to find them, or you're a small team, how do you get to it all, right? And so what I find is most nonprofits, I think you'll agree, we start out because we see a need in the world and we have a heart of service. And so we want to provide that or help. Oftentimes, nonprofit leaders don't see themselves that they're starting a business.
Yeah.
They just want to help. And they misunderstand that you, nonprofit, as a business, you can make money, you should make money. How do you keep your programs going if your doors close? Right? And so, how do you understand that if you don't have some plan of some sort, whatever you call it, whatever it looks like to you, whatever it means, at the bottom line, you understand that yes, you deserve money in the bank, an overflow of it, right? And so I would
Yeah.
say another challenge is the misunderstanding of our sector.
Yeah. I
Should I say that for the people in the back?
Yes, I was gonna say that's fantastic, right? I think there's so much money. There's a confusion around money in the sector. It's so uncomfortable to ask for it sometimes, to justify it, to justify yourself being paid for the amazing work that you're doing. There's a whole
Right,
bunch of money therapy, I'm sure,
right,
needed in the sector.
right. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so for yourself, how have you gotten beyond some of those things? Or do you have any insights? What does having a healthy attitude towards nonprofit plus money look like?
Right. One of the things I did, so I grew up poor, and what our sustainability was love and support and community. So I grew up believing as long as I had enough or I had shelter or I had, clothes and food to continue to live, I'm good. I never was taught at a young age how important it was to have savings and emergency funds and all these various things. So when I went into this industry, I'm all about education, and that's why education is key for Jamsz Konnections is part of what we do. So I went and worked for a bank. I went and worked for a security company as far as like insurance securities. And so I went and did some research to change my attitude and my relationship with money. First, we have to understand our strengths and our weaknesses. We too often think that failure is a bad thing,
Yeah.
or think that if I don't know it, people aren't going to trust me or want to work with me. We cannot do it all. So that's another issue. In any sector that's small, entrepreneurships, there a lot of people are solopreneurs, right? And
Yeah.
but that's on the for-profit side. That's not the nonprofit sector. We are about community. So it's not designed for you to do it alone. So that's when I talk about education, that's part of what we want to do is help people understand what it means to be a nonprofit leader in the sector and understand that you are not supposed to do it alone, right? Especially if you came from the for-profit side and you're taking some of that philosophy into this sector. You can't because you will always be behind. And so I think it's important to get education, nonprofit education, because there is a difference in running a nonprofit versus a for-profit. It's important for you to do self-development, right? Leadership and just self-development. Because if you are not secure in who you are and understand who you are and the value that you bring to the table, you're always going to be being of disservice to you, your organization, and the community to which you serve.
There's a huge piece of professional development. And to be fair, I've always worked at small businesses and startups. So I haven't actually felt like I've gotten a lot of professional development, even myself, without
Right.
my own decision to invest in it. But I
Mhm.
think you can see it just being that much more apparent in the nonprofit sector,
Right.
how little professional development really happens, personal, professional, like the both,
Absolutely.
right? Um,
Absolutely.
and how we're paying a cost for that among both our leadership, among the like rampant burnout in the sector. There really is something about this like concern of competition, which I honestly look at and I'm frequently like, what are we even talking about? Why are we even looking at it this way? We shouldn't be trying to do everything. If you're an
Absolutely.
organization serving a local community, a community's needs are enormous. Why wouldn't we be trying to partner and instead go
Absolutely.
like, here's our zone of
Absolutely.
genius. Here's your zone of genius. How can we find ways to support each other?
Absolutely. And one of the concerns and the struggles is I feel that, and it's not a, disregarding the for-profit sector.
Yeah.
It's understanding if you come from that and you bring some of that work ethic or belief to the nonprofit, then you have this competition. Or again, part of the education is people talk about there's limited resources and this and that. There's so much resources out there. And so one's mindset, do you have that of lack or of ample? Right? So if you don't think there's enough, then you're hoarding and you think there's competition. But if you believe there's enough, then you're willing to collaborate. You're willing to share. People have asked me, what do you do? Or what, don't tell your plan. I'm like, here, I'll give you the blueprint. You know why? Because the more people serving the community, the better, because that's why we're in the sector.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
can't do it all by myself.
you just can't. You just can't. And that shared blueprint, man, we talk so much in the sector about learning from each, we should be learning from each other's mistakes and things like that. You have to be willing to say you made a mistake and share it in order to learn from
Exactly.
somebody else, right? It's funny, in close to where I live in Toronto, they actually have this evening startup thing where you're literally supposed to come and talk about your mess ups, except for they don't use the word mess. And and you
Right.
know, I won't put that out there, but it's so critical, right? What was the thing you did that afterwards? I think that does happen more frequently in the startup space where people go, well, this was epically ridiculous and everything. And they're more willing to share what it looked like
Mhm.
along the journey. I'm sure just as many large legacy nonprofits have things that they could share that haven't worked that could save a whole bunch of other orgs a whole bunch of headaches, but we're
Absolutely.
too nervous to talk about those things.
Yeah,
That
when I first had the vision to start Jamsz Konnections, I did reach out to leaders in the community that I've seen be successful, asking them to be mentors and that they weren't willing. And so I never want Jamsz Konnections to be that. But have you ever heard of the book The Power of No, I think is the name of it?
I have heard of the book. I haven't read all of it. It's one of those ones where it keeps getting referenced and I see the excerpts and everything. But yeah,
Yeah. And so basically, if do you know the concept about it?
I think so, but throw it out there.
So
I want
basically, the goal is to get a lot of no's.
to, okay.
And
Yeah.
so this guy that wrote the book, his organization was around sales. And so they got an award for the most no's, but it translated into the most sales,
It's
right?
true,
And
right?
it's an opportunity to learn from those failures, those setbacks. What do I need to tweak? You get to do it better and continue to improve, right? And
Yeah.
so, again, that's mindset, understanding yourself, not being afraid to fail. When you know why you're doing it, when you fail, it means you're only improving it for the people you're doing it for.
Love that. That's fantastic. We have to, right? I feel like we covered a whole minor discussion on nonprofit there, Bobbie. I love it. So peer support. And like you just noted, you got a lot of people who were like, no, thanks, don't want to be mentoring here. But how do you think peer support is really important in this sector? And have you had those experiences of peer support?
Peer support is crucial and important. I would say part of Jamsz Konnections model is I am so quick to share what went well and what didn't. I always tell people I don't know it all.
Yeah.
I don't claim to, I don't strive to, but what I do know, I'm willing to share. And if it resonates and serves you, take it. If it does
Yeah.
not, let it go. I mean, it's all about finding the resource that connects with you to do better, right? And so finding people in the industry that have been there and willing to share. And the challenge becomes, especially since, again, we work with small nonprofits, there's a lot of consultants out there willing to share their knowledge, but there's a fee. And these small nonprofits who, just like any nonprofit, need those services. So I would highly encourage and recommend that anyone listening to this, if you guys choose to do this clip or you pay part of this clip, that folks who have been blessed with the knowledge and are financially able, never expecting anyone to go beyond their own means, to put themselves in a deficit. But if you're overflowing,
Yeah.
share, right? Because one of the things that Jamsz Konnections wants to create is a resource of, we have all sorts, similar to what you're doing, Tasha, with the Nonprofit Hive, you have all sorts of resources. Maybe there's people in there that do pro bono work, maybe they don't. And if
Yeah.
you don't have that component, you have sponsors all the time. So I anticipate that you do, right?
Yeah.
But it's that type of community. That's what I feel peer-to-peer is about, is creating that community of people who are service minded, social good minded, and that they know that by giving back, it's making the world a better place. And they're not giving for the expectation of return. The return is the good that they're doing and the change they're making in the world. But some people need that financial change. And if that's where you are, that's fine, right? But we
Yeah.
just need more people that are in the position that are willing to be in this philanthropic space to helping small nonprofits. Because oftentimes in the industry, and you've probably seen this, Tasha, of you're just starting, you need funding, but you can't get it because you just started. You don't
Yeah.
have data to say your value. Well, my value is I'm identifying a group of people that need our services. How do you help me fulfill that if I got to already have it?
It's a chicken or the egg in the like possible way.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so we need people who have the financial means to say, I believe in social good. I believe in the nonprofit sector. We have startup funds. We have whatever. We have funds that are not limited to just programs. And I see it getting better. We just need more of that. And I consider all that about peer to peer.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the peer-to-peer piece. It's not discussed. It's almost like for some reason we think in this sector we don't need to talk to each other very often. And that's partly how the Nonprofit Hive came into being, where I'm like, how do
Right.
you wonderful humans not know each other? Come
Right.
on, let's start gathering. But you can learn so much from another person who, not that they've necessarily had more nonprofit experience than you. I
Right.
think these informal peer mentorships can
Mhm.
actually be more valuable because the power is not imbalanced in the same way and people can have more honest conversations.
Absolutely. I really thank you for this opportunity for me to share. Thank you for creating the nonprofit. It's very needed. You are the example, in my opinion, of what community is and how it should look when it's about people volunteering to be a part of it and offering their time and learn. In anything that we do, there are going to be some people, not that I've come across the Nonprofit Hive, but there is the risk that there might be some people with ill intent. We can't
Yeah.
operate on those people. We got to
Yeah,
operate on the good that's intended for what we want to do and the positive change we want to make.
totally. Well, this kind of leads perfectly in because my wrap up question is always, you've been a member for quite some time, appreciate you deeply. You're one of our biggest cheerleaders out there on LinkedIn, just totally adore it and so thankful. And what have you gotten out of being a member of this community?
What I've gotten out of being part of the Nonprofit Hive, I would say, is first and foremost community. There's nothing wrong with having differences of opinion because that's how we stretch or grow. But it is also helpful when you're in a room where there are like minded people who are striving for the good and wanting to make change for the good, right? It connects to my spirit, it connects to my soul, and I just relate so much with what you're building. And I feel like I'm at home.
Oh, I like that so much. Well, and I keep thinking, as you were talking about this cool location where you're at today and everything, one of my hopes for the future for the Nonprofit Hive is making it more possible for members to go, hey, I'd love to have something in Austin, right? And get, because that in-person piece is like that
Mhm.
next level and you get
Yeah,
to even get more and everything. But I also never wanted it to be limited by geography because there is so many cool humans out there and they bring different lived experiences into
right.
our world. And I think nonprofit needs that wraparound view to look at itself and go, what could we do differently and what's realistic? I'm just so thankful that you joined us because it just has been so lovely. And I always like to make sure too, how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow up? How can they learn more about Jamsz Konnections and services and how you run as a nonprofit?
Perfect. Tasha, again, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation and to share about myself and Jamsz Konnections. And like I said, to share a new perspective of the origin story. I love
Yeah,
that. So, Jamsz Konnections, we have a website. We are on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Jamsz is spelled differently. Jamsz and Konnections, Konnections. So that's .org for Jamsz Konnections website. And then at the bottom, we have all the icons where you can just click on it and start following us, which we'd love that you would do. One last plug. I said earlier, education is important. So we would love those of you that are in the nonprofit sector or love the nonprofit sector. We are conducting a survey on education. And so reach out to me, Bobbie, Bobbie, at jamskonnections.org,
perfect.
JamsKonnections.org.
I will make sure all of those links end up in this when it gets posted as well, because those are fantastic. Thank you so much again for doing this with me. Really just deeply appreciate you and love the work you're doing out in the world.
Great. Thanks so much, Tasha. Love what you're doing.